Welcome to the Zachrilege cast. And that's all I'm going to say. The rest of the preamble comes after the post-ramble tonight. We're going to talk about me. This is episode 100, Human Beings and Assorted Pets of the Zachrilege cast. What the hell is a Zachrilege cast, you may ask? Well, you'll find out. So I'm going to turn things on its head. Usually the questions come from me to my guests. Well, tonight the questions kind of come from me to me, and I'm not going to do different voices because that's weird. We're going to go for a few minutes, and my hope is that this is part one of the 100 episode extravaganza. But the last time I did a multi-guest episode, it became a one guest episode, and that was that. So the promise will go about as far as this. And I'm going to try to talk for like 10 to 15 minutes. So you check for me, okay? Let me know if I go too far. What is the elevator speech for my show? Well, the Zachrilege cast is a podcast YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist/secular/awesome community. I am the sole proprietor. I do this all by myself. I do not record on a set night. I record whenever the hell my guest is available. Because with the exception of about 4 solo episodes, all of which were like in the first 20, I have had a guest on every single time I've been on the air. I live in Atlanta, Georgia with a wife and 2 cats. Now, how did this show get started? Well, I started listening to podcasts, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago. And one of the shows I listened to religiously, yes, I said religiously, was the Adam Carolla podcast when he got let go from his radio show and started his own podcast, which is slightly more popular than this one. And one day he went on a little bit of a rant about religious people, and he used some inappropriate words regarding religion. And I thought, maybe there's some shows about atheism out there. Maybe this is because I never had any formal religious background. My parents kind of let me go my way, and that kind of became no way. Go with the least. I'd say go with the easiest path, but this isn't necessarily so. But what basically happened is I started listening to shows like The Atheist Experience and Barroom Atheist and other show names that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I probably should. And I was just floored that this actually happened. And one time, Barroom Atheist, Bill and Susie, had a guest bartender, and I agreed to be the guest. And I showed up on their show, and it started like 11 o'clock at night, because one thing you should know about atheist podcasts, either we are early bird special, super early, or amazingly late. Like I started at 3 a.m. Mountain Time, kind of like that. And I did it, and I tried it, and I thought, you know what? I could do this. I had a microphone, and really, you don't even really need a microphone. You can just talk to your computer and have earbuds, probably better. You don't have an echo. That's a minor thing. And you too can do an atheist or any kind of podcast, YouTube video. Google Hangouts are really easy to do. No problem at all. A question I usually ask is your show serious, jokey, or a hybrid? I'd like to say my show is totally jokey, but I have made people cry before. I'm not quite Charlie Rose in that regard, but I have done that. So I'd call it a hybrid. Do I have segment and actual audio work? I'm trying to do that better. I do an hour-long show, and I try to put in live reads at the 20 and 40-minute mark. And most podcasts that do editing and actual audio work just find some bumpers, some promos from other shows, and they play them during that period of time. I do them live. I just type them out. I find a show I like. I find people who support my show. I find people I just decide I want to talk about. And it kind of breaks up the show a little bit. So it's, not just an hour straight, but it's pretty close. And my favorite question I like to ask of people is, do you drink while recording, and is it recommended to drink while listening to your show, assuming you're not operating a motor vehicle, unless you're in Kentucky, because it's legal there. So if you don't ask Andrew Torres if that's legal. Now, if you haven't had at least 2 drinks before hitting play, then you are not going to get into my deep intellectual humor. I drink, although tonight I may not drink while I'm actually recording. I have a nice porter sitting here getting nice and warm and tasty that I'll try. And I drink the really snobby high-end beer. If there's light in there, if it's produced by some giant company that would rather kill you than sell you a beer, yeah, I'm probably not drinking that. But yes, drinking is not required. It's a strong optional. Question from the audience. Once I scroll to my answer, what were some of the challenges in doing this show? Well, like I said before, I had a mic, and that was about it. Now, Bobby C. of No Religion Required, who hopefully I'll be talking to tomorrow, first guest, by the way, he may curse the day that he said that he'd show me how to do this and contribute as a patron. My main challenge, other than personal laziness, is that my wife is a believer. I can't think of a subject that I could choose that would have been taken less well. And of course, challenge number 2 is my own lazy, procrastinating self. I like to give myself challenges, I guess. And so once I've found my guest, then it's time to binge listen to their show and prepare and come up with some questions. Because I do want to be informed and know people I interview a ton, because I want to try to at least ask one question that's unique to this person. Because a lot of people I've talked to, they've been interviewed dozens of times. Marissa McCool, she was interviewed 7 times the week I interviewed her. So I had to come up with at least one question. Now, a question came up about the people I enjoy most as guests. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because the people that are best at interviewing are the ones who have done a lot. So sometimes their answers can seem canned. And occasionally you're going to throw out that softball question because you know there's going to be a great answer. You know there's a great story behind it. And if you're going to have somebody on the show who does a blog, who does an interview, does their own show, well, they're going to want to talk about that, and they're probably good at it. So let them do that. But it is fun to get unique guests. Like I had the only Georgia therapist in the Secular Therapist Project, which is a secular project for therapy to assume people who don't want religious therapists can have that. And I'm pretty sure that was the only one she was interviewed by. I interviewed a fantasy football friend who's also a pastor, so that was one of 2 Christian guests I've had. That was fun because we had friendship in common, we had football in common, we had beer in common. Religion, not so much, but not as divergent as you might think. And another question that was asked was about what kind of feedback have I received? Well, I'll be honest, I haven't gotten a ton of it. I always appreciate when anybody comes back to me and talks about the show and gives any feedback, even if it's just, hey, that was good, or what the hell are you thinking? People usually don't say that kind of stuff to me. Feel free to do that. That's totally fine. I did get a question about if I could start over, what would I do? And I'm thinking honestly now, I'm like, well, I'm not sure if I'd go through with it, just because when I started, there were a ton of other atheist podcasts starting as well. Like, you'll see if you pay attention to the atheist podcast community, there are quite a lot of atheist podcasts in that 80 to 120 episode range. So a lot of them started when I did, January of 2015, and they're going strong. But really, I just think I have a unique voice, and that I'm a unique person doesn't mean I'm that special. There is something to be said, the old Woody Allen term, and probably not one of the best names I could mention on this or any show. He said about 50% of success is showing up. Really? You come every week to your show, you provide good content, people are going to find you, and they're going to listen to you, and they're going to talk back to you, and maybe, just maybe, someday you'll get an army of minions who can attack. And I'm half joking about that. Now, a question came up about who's influenced me the most. Well, I've listened to tons of voices at the beginning to the end, and it's great to find new people who I'm like, wow, that was an interesting angle, or that's something I didn't think about. because it's not as new and shiny as it was at the beginning. Now, I still like the Barroom Atheist method. They publish when they want, they talk about what they want to, and everybody loves them because they're usually drunk. So that's perfect. Their next question is about Patreon. I figured that sounded like a question that needed to be answered, because if you listen to atheists or a lot of podcasts, they talk about Patreon. What is Patreon? Well, let me tell you how it works. You go to patreon.com and perhaps you add /Zachrilege to see my Patreon page, and you have the option to donate to shows that you like. You can donate $1 a month, you can donate X amount per episode, and the good shows tell you what rewards you get for different levels. Really, for me, it's been the $1 level. Give you a shout out. $5 one, I'll promote your show, or I'll send you tweets, that kind of thing. Really, what the point of Patreon is to help people pay for costs. These are, if you want to publish a podcast, if you're going to listen to, you can do what I do, the Google Hangout method, where you just record on Google Hangouts, and once it's done, you have a YouTube video. That will just cost you whatever it costs to get on the internet and to perhaps have a microphone. But if you want to be on iTunes, you want to be on Stitcher, you want to be on Spreaker, you're going to have to pay monthly costs to a service like Podbean that'll put an RSS feed, which is just basically a feed of your audio, out there to the various podcasting feed things. And really, some people use Patreon and make a full-time living. Scathing Atheist, they got 3 hosts, and they make north of, I think, $2,500 a week per episode. And they do it as a full-time living. A lot of people who are in this are definitely in the in-between stage. I would guess somebody like No Religion Required probably makes enough to as a slight supplement to income, but as you find out, there's like potato chips. You start donating to other shows yourself, and you can do, like some shows allow you to do like a PayPal one-time donation, which makes sense because sometimes you forget about a repeat thing and you'll be reminded every month. But for me, in my case, I got Bobby, Human, Teote from the start, from the first episode, and Marissa McCool of Inciting Incident joined a couple of months ago. So I can get super irrationally jealous when I listen to a show and hear about their multiple new patrons a month or a week. And really, it's not even beer money for me. And I've donated patron money to causes like the Powerhouse in Montgomery, a house for women who attend a local abortion clinic. And really, it feels good to say, oh, I have this little bit of money to donate to a cause if I like, or to help somebody in need. Because there's always somebody in need in this community or in any community. And really, most people doing this are covering costs because, hey, we aren't rich around here. That's for dang sure. So question is kind of a personal question. It's one thing I've experienced that no one would expect unless they met my mom or knew me for more than 3 hours of conversation, is that I had a near-death experience in 2001. Now, those of you who have heard this who are easily bored, I would say fast forward a minute or two. I love that 15-second forward and backward button on iTunes. Is such a good thing, especially for you people who have giant, super long introductions. I will not have a giant, super long introduction to my show or this. So here's what happened. 2001, I contract a staph infection. I get a blood clot in my left leg that shoots pieces of it into my lungs. And I go into the emergency room and end up in a coma for 3 weeks because my lungs are not functioning. And they don't know what's wrong with me. They find out it's a staph infection that's pooled in the base of my spine. They do surgery on me to remove it. They pump me full of antibiotics. And approximately 3 weeks later, I wake up, not realizing what had happened and kind of having to relearn how to do a lot of stuff. Wasn't really good at walking after that. I'd lost about, 40 pounds. You don't get a great, you don't get like filet mignon through the tubes. And I have my little tattoo. There it is right here. The trach scar right here. Anytime I meet somebody in the medical field, they know what that is right away, which was always leads to fun stories. So my little bit of near-death experience, I mean, I had it going on for, I don't know, a couple of months. But I was coming out of a coma, so they were giving me these crazy drugs. So I would be in and out, and I'd have these crazy hallucinations. Like, I had one hallucination that my nurse was trying to kill me, and she would actually like cut off my oxygen supply, and I wouldn't be able to breathe. And I believe I've heard of this phenomenon where you're sleeping and you actually have paralysis, but you wake up and the paralysis stays. And I really couldn't breathe during that dream, and it was pretty horrific. And I had one series of dreams in which I was actually watching my vital signs go down slowly to zero. And I just sat there like you're sitting at the bottom of the ocean and you can't swim your way out. And you're thinking, what's next? Where do I go? What happens? And then it just clicked in my brain that nothing is going to happen. You're just going to cease existing, and that's it. Now, you can't take this experience I had and say this is legitimate for everybody in the world. I guarantee you, if I went into a coma and had a near-death experience and I was Christian, I probably would have seen Jesus and thought I was going to heaven. Or I would have seen Muhammad if I was Islam. Or if I was other religions, I would have seen something consistent with that faith. And it would have perhaps made me deeper ingrained in that faith. And then kind of allowed me to realize that I didn't really have one. And it didn't really matter. And then all of a sudden it did matter. And that's why I'm doing a show. That's kind of the bottom line. So what else do I love outside of this one topic? Besides my wife and my kitties, well, of course, beer. I used to drink whatever, and then I discovered that there's better stuff out there. And that was that. And you can find any community on the internet. And I found a good beer community on the internet. I found some people I know in person. And I have a closet right over there full of the good stuff. And I will drink it slowly, luxuriously. I'm also into football, though, less than usual, less than I was. I used to be a diehard, and now I'm kind of like, all right, something to do. I do another show called Going for Two, which is just another web show that's I do on Wednesday nights. We have a nice audience of one. Thank you, Don. I also enjoy hanging out with interesting people who don't make me own the conversation. Now, where do I go with episodes of 100 and beyond? Well, I probably will ask more questions. I will try to get people I disagree with, but I will not, and I mean this in all caps, I will not do a mutual yelling session. I've seen too many debates, and it bores me more than anything else. I know that's what a lot of social media is and a lot of discourse is these days. I don't mind being challenged or angry, but it has to feel productive. If I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, I do want to feel like we come to some level of understanding. And more importantly, the point of this show initially was just for me to talk about podcasts I listened to. But I just found the host of the first podcast I was going to talk about said, hey, I'll show up. That was Bobby C. And I was like, you know, it'd be more interesting than me talking about a podcast? The person talking about a podcast. And not everybody I've talked to has a podcast. Sometimes they're just people I found to be interesting, people I've met in the atheist community and other communities. And that's fine. So I assume there are more questions out there, but I'd rather find some interviewers who can reach that deep and find out the real Zach. I'm going to say that the real Zachrilege, the version of me, is a little more brash, a little more out there, a little more I don't give a fuck about who I am and how it's going to affect people. But really, it's just me trying to express an opinion on a subject nobody wants to talk about to an audience that hopefully stays awake for the whole time. Now, let's do some interstitial music for the next segment. And if there isn't one, this has been the Zachrilege Cast, episode 100, Lazy Man Edition. I'm so in love with you. Whatever you want to do is all right with me.